Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man. I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gonna teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington Charles Bishop. Mike is still on assignment. I believe that's what he told me, but we still looking for him. We'll see. With that being said, Charles, how you doing today?
Doing well, Doc, doing well. A lot of interesting stuff happened this past weekend. We had a lot of sports going on. Can't wait to dig into it.
Yeah, we can go in many directions, and we might do some stuff on the fly script, as they say, because it's just so much. I'm not sure if we could all script it all in. But with that being said, let me get the prop open. Welcome to episode 488 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. The show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports. For institutions large and small, from the NEIA to the NCAA, we share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios in Signal Live, the KSOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, multi-Hall of Famer, that is Ralph Cooper, in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. Episode 488, Charles. Man, 12 episodes away from 500 episodes. And me taking a retirement break. Retire from the game, as they say.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Retirement, man. I'm sure that feels good.
Yeah, you know a little bit of something about retirement. Kick your feet up and just, well, I want to do this for a little bit. Okay. I want to do that for a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Then sometimes, like, people like yourself like to go back and haze themselves. Say, hey, I'm going to go back and get my doctorate. What the hell?
Did I ever go back and haze myself? Woo. I don't know what made me want to go through the pledge process all over again, but
yeah, you sure right. I don't know about that. I must admit, it is exactly what it is. With that being said, how's it going?
Doing well. I see we got a couple people done dropped in on Stephen Gatham. I'm sure he was taking a look at whatever was going on CIAA wise this weekend, but yeah, we got a whole lot of directions to go in. So we had a lot of good HBCU sports this past weekend.
We need to ask Stephen what's going on in the CIAA, especially on the men's side. I know the women is fascinating and everybody's looking for that collision course in the CIAA tournament, but can he give us any hints on the odds for the men's side for the CIAA? Where
pull up a chair.
From a poker chip.
Pull up a chair, Steve. I'm curious to hear this. Yes.
Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency, LLC. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting and data analytics. Before I go to you, I want to share a little bit of this. Langston University on the men's side has clinched the title, but they eyed the number one spot for postseason. Great interview this past weekend on Sunday. As Brian and AD's show, Brian did the interview with Coach, talking to the Langston coach, which is fascinating, his story. And, man, he got a little soft spot in there. He was able to get the coach to kind of get touched and get emotional in terms of what's going on there. So if you hadn't seen that interview, go check that out from Sunday during Sports Wrap. Really good show. But, I mean, it's pretty early to be clinching. What does that tell you about Langston?
Well, what does that tell you about Brian pulling on the old heartstrings over there? Okay, I see you with the interview. All right, nice.
Yeah, he got it done. I was like, oh, Brian even had me had to kind of, you know how you magically while you eye like ain't nothing going on, you just, oh, okay, get right. But I was like, wow, had the coach had to dip down for a minute and
That's
pause.
all right.
I said, ooh, he got him on that one. He got
That's
it.
All right,
Langston
playing some tremendous ball over there. Like you said, that says a lot that they've already locked up that postseason action there for them. So.
Speaking of that, Jackson State, are they like 2 games away from clinching at least a share of the title? Number 1 seed outright since they got the head-to-head victory. I don't think they're like 2 games away, so they're not too far behind. The challenging thing, interesting, is they only have they have their rivalry matchup, so they're gonna have to wait 2 weeks because they don't play your traditionally 2 games, unless Grambling with their rivalry matchup, unless it goes down, then obviously a win and a loss by Grambling would put them in a position where they clinch. But they need 2 games to clinch. So it'll be interesting to follow. They're not far away from clinching themselves, talking about that side of it. We'll get the poll ranking, let you know what has changed. But in talking about the MEAC, nobody's clinching in that for sure, as things of really interesting on the women's side. Men's side, a little more room for Norfolk State after a big win. North Carolina Central. Close matchups on the road. He said they had a chance to make a statement. They certainly made a statement. Probably not the one they want, as they took 2 losses. Again, we'll go and see how that affects them in the poll ranking. But tough weekend. Close games makes it even more unnerving that they were right there in both of those contests and couldn't pull it out. That's how South Carolina State makes a statement, though. I think that's interesting. They was to get into it. But we'll get a chance to take a little deeper dive, but I wanted to kind of touch on those things because they was intriguing to me. Big win by Clark Atlanta or Morehouse. Shout out to Clark Atlanta getting the rivalry at AUC, getting that done. That means they go 2-0 against Morehouse.
Wow.
More importantly, sit at the top of the East with that big win, which both of them came in with the same record. So statement. Now, on the other side is interesting, and we'll get maybe more in this on Thursday. You have Miles that beat up Clark Atlanta. When everybody was focused on the East, we did tell everybody to watch out for that game. But Miles said, hold on.
West puttering along.
He's having a little bit of fun, but look out for us.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Good stuff.
Let me shift it to you and see what's on your mind in terms of some of the news of the week. Championship.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at championships. You had the SWAC Women's Indoor Championship, Men's Indoor Championship. But FAMU, they claim the SWAC Women's Indoor Track and Field Championship. The FAMU Track and Field program will return from the 2024 SWAC Women's Indoor Track and Field Championship with 15 medals and the Women's Championship title. The success marks the 2nd championship under Garfield Ellenwood, the Rattlers Director of Track and Field and Cross Country, who recently led the women's cross country team to the podium this past fall. So in the women's standings, 9 points separated number 1 and number 2 teams. Florida A&M recorded 122 to defeat the reigning champions, Alabama State, as the Lady Hornets finished in 2nd place with 113 points. On the men's side, it was the Texas Southern Tigers. They claimed the men's indoor track and field championship. Texas Southern claimed the 2024 men's indoor track and field title on this past Sunday at the Birmingham Crossplex, winning in spectacular fashion. The Tigers amassed 141 total points at the event behind the strong field performances on day 1 of the event and impressive individual team performances on day 2. Prairie View finished 2nd at 85.5 points, and UAPB rounded out at 3rd at 78 points, finished in 2nd and 3rd place respectively. So kudos go out to FAMU's women and Texas Southern men for bringing home the women's indoor title and the men's indoor title.
Yeah, good stuff on both of those. Shout out to Coach Duncan, a colleague of ours.
Living legend. Yeah.
Both old school wise. He coaches and teaches in there. And intriguing enough, it's not like he teaches a track class. He teaches a swimming class. I wonder how many people realize that.
I realize it because I got a bunch of kids coming late from swimming to get into my class. So I give you a pass. know you're trying to get ready to get back over here. So
right. I'm glad that you're giving folks a little heart tug. I see you at the basketball game charge a student up. I like, y'all get a little bit into this first. In the classes.
Oh man, it's funny. I don't see him in class, and all of a sudden I see him at the basketball game, and I just wave. So
wow, he's getting it in. I see.
Yes, indeed.
So fascinating when you just talk about those looks championships. FAMU. I also must say I didn't think it would be long before FAMU on the track side would get into the winner's circle. Just all that talent in Florida, you wouldn't think it would take much to do it, and they do it on the women's side. So shout out to FAMU. They're starting to get their skids a little bit. You hear a lot of these championships here and there every once in a while. And so first 2 years, they kind of took the haze and licks. They're like, all right, they kicking the shoes up and getting a little comfortable in this house, it looks like.
That's one fan base you don't want to get started. They give them championships up. I'm just saying. That's one fan base.
All day long.
You don't want to activate that fan base.
Sports marketing activation. I like the word.
Yes, indeed.
Before I turn it back on to you to give some other news today that you want to share, I have to say kudos to the Legacy Bowl. One, we have a group of students that were going over there that's going to work from Texas Southern University. They got a grant scholarship that's going to take a bus of students. They're going to stay a day and go to the job fair. Then they're going to get to attend the game. Some of them will be working down there. So fascinating to see sport management students for Texas Southern University when they get into some of the live action. And they're doing it in style as they'll be traveling by bus, get a chance to see the city, eat the nice foods of New Orleans that everybody seems to like when they get down there. But they get to partake in the festivities. Besides that, the other thing I noticed is the model with Davis Richards and FAMU's quarterback. They were over there getting in, and they had the uniforms on, and they're dressed in those Mardi Gras colors. I was like, ooh, that's a nice little touch. They had them down Bourbon Street, taking all types of pictures and videos. So kudos in terms of what that looks like. So I thought that was sharp. I just wanted to kind of shout that out. With that being said, any additional news you wanted to share, Charles?
Yeah, and then this comes to us from HBCU Sports, Jared Hoffman on the write-up, and he talked about players. We talked about the Legacy Bowl, some players whose stock is rising down there at the HBCU Combine. He mentions Davius Richard, from quarterback from North Carolina Central, who ran an impressive 4.5 down there. As well as doing a really great job with his performance in throwing drills. You also had Jarvin Howard, running back from Alcorn, who ran a 4.46 down there. One of the many reasons he was a highlight among the running backs of the HBCU Combine. Of course, Jarvin Howard, 5'10", 215 pounds from Alcorn. He makes mention of Ladarius Owens, running back at Texas Southern. Of course, we had up close look at Ladarius Owens here in Houston, but he ran a 4.4. 40 down there at the Combine. R.J. Mobley from Winston-Salem State, the wide receiver, 6'3", 210 pounds, ran a 4.42 in the 40-yard dash. Of course, Lubert Denilis, defensive lineman from Benedict, 5'11", 280-pound defensive lineman. He's also doing a great job, and he mentions in the article that he's down 30 pounds while participating in field drills down there at the Combine. You also had Brandon Codrington, defensive back from North Carolina Central, who ran a 4.57, solid number. Then defensive back from Jackson State, John Huggins. He didn't disappoint. He ran a 4.39 in the 40, showcasing his coverage skills. Of course, he was known as a hitter in Jackson State secondary. Also did a tremendous job this past season playing a little bit more in coverage. So all five of these players' stock is rising down there at the HBC Combine at Legacy Bowl.
It'll be fascinating to see how that comes out. It's already interesting. Sometimes life-changing opportunities in regards to the draft. We'll see what it means for some of our HBCU fan favorites over there. So with that being said, let's take our first break. We'll turn it back on the other side. We'll get in the major division on the women's side to see what's going on in week 7 of the poll rankings.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentJAX.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Cavil's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Cavil's Voice, Cavil's Voice, Cavil'sVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up message quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a law, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with week number 7. Dr. Cavil's HBCU Major Division Women's Basketball Poll rankings will be revealed now. No one dropped out of the poll this week, Charles. So same top 5. You do have some changes throughout the poll. Also give you an update in terms of those receiving votes. Southern Jaguars had 2 big wins, but wasn't enough to jump in the poll rankings. Another one this weekend, though, I'm almost assuring you that they'll find a way in the top 5, which creates a classic matchup against Grambling on the women's side, same matchup on the men's side. Both of them are going to be important in terms of the conference standings, at least in terms of the ranking. I'm not sure much of what's going on in terms of what that looks like, but it'll be interesting to see. Well, as you see, Jaguars are sitting outside of the poll rankings at 11-13 and 9-4. They came to Texas and had a good run as they had the 2 wins, one over Prairie View, one over Texas Southern on Monday. So big weekends for them. Behind them, Howard that split, big win, tough loss, 9-14, 6-3. Not seen on there, just so you know, Alabama A&M just in the mix outside of that top, trying to figure it out. They get 2 big wins that puts them right back in the mix in terms of seeing if they can find a way in the top 4 for the tournament. They sit at 12-13, 7-6. So did want to give them a little love outside of the top 7. With that, let's get into the top 5 and see where all the action is. At number 5, you have Arkansas Pine Bluff Golden Lions. They got a win on Saturday, but then they turned around and got a loss as well. So they kind of reverting back to the up and down season they have. They are at 14-12, 9-4, 52 points. They did drop a slot, but not enough to drop out of the poll. But you see Southern is seeking to hunt them down. It'll be interesting to see any movement from this weekend. As we said, very good matchup. We'll get a chance to talk more in detail about that and get your thoughts overall. With that being said, you have number 4, dropping 2 spots. North Carolina A&T State Aggies, shockingly for some, dropped a tough matchup. They went 16-8, 10-3. They dropped that matchup on Friday, rebounded on Wednesday, but they are in the mix there with 54 points. Reeves ranked 2. As we see, Mike has joined us in here, ready to get some of this action. At number 3, the Grambling State Tigers at 16-8, 10-3, 62 points. Grambling rises all the way up 2 spots to number 3 as they were number 5 last weekend, but they get 2 big weekends. This is the first time in some time, Charles, where you see the Louisiana team come into Texas, particularly since the change, obviously. Before that, they used to split, but they went 7-1. When you look at all the combined teams, the women went 4-0 against Texas two-step this weekend. Grambling again was 16-8 overall, 10-3, playing some really good basketball. First-year coach has really got the Tigers running. I mean, I'm not sure if anybody thought they would do what they're doing in terms of the first year. 62 points, again, moving up 2 spots. Bringing us to number 2, where you have Norfolk State Spartans, 19-5, 8-1. They're playing some really good basketball. Things are looking well. They had that early conference loss that surprised everybody and quietly have rebounded and are looking really good. And I think because of that early loss, people kind of put Spartans out of their mind in regards to how good that basketball team. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know much about that. They're back into action. They do have 1 first-place vote to 73 points, and they move up a spot. But everybody right now, Shacks are chasing Jackson State, the Tigers. They sit at 18-6. 13-0 are rolling. Charles reminds me every so often in terms of scoring a game where it gets trouble. Every time I go to look over there, Charles not to worry, I get to point back over there and say, see, I told you. And they just run it off and run away with folks. 7 first-place votes, 79 points. But I know Charles is just trying to be fair, try to make sure he didn't get too excited. But Jackson State, they're rolling. They're playing some good basketball. To their credit, they may not quite be the dominant team, which kind of gives you a pause here and there, but you know they have the heart of a champion. They have the experience, and they find a way to get things done, and they just don't lose in conference play. So they're ranked number 1. You have 3 of these teams: Jackson State, Norfolk State. 2 of them, and Norfolk State were in the top 25 in the mid-major poll rankings to give you some indication. The talent level that's in the top 5. And obviously, Grambling is screaming, and they're right behind it. In Pine Bluff, although their record may not indicate it, we know the talent that's on the team. Interesting to kind of see what that looks like. With that being said, Charles, since you've been here and you know how to get here on time, I'm going to let you start and give me your top 5. Then we'll see if we can squeeze Mike in there and give him a little time as he joins us in the second.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you take a look at it, I like where the poll is looking. A little bit of a stub of the toe from North Carolina A&T as they took a step back. Very interesting with UAPB. We know that they are a talented ball club, but it looks like they have some internal issues. I think that played out last night, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see what happens with the Golden Lions going forward. Hopefully they can get things rectified over there. But very impressed by Grambling this past weekend. Got an opportunity to look at them up close. And, although they don't have a score per se, even in the top 15 in scoring in the SWAC, they just play great team ball. Very impressive to see what they do on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. And just out of curiosity, last night I'm looking, and I'm like, I see, they're top 4 in terms of offense in the SWAC, top 4 in terms of defense in the SWAC. But a very interesting stat with regards to Grambling. How we look at Jackson State, and really one of the secrets of the sauce with Jackson State is they rebound you to death. Well, Grambling is right there with Jackson State in terms of rebounding. Jackson State averaging 42.6 rebounds per game. Grambling right at 42.1 rebounds. I think a separation of maybe 13 rebounds or so. So it's very interesting to kind of watch this Grambling team. Are they the team that has a puncher's chance to really come after Jackson State, especially in the SWAC tournament?
Good stuff, Charles, breaking it down, and I agree with you on sides of that, man. You're running with gas. You gave a really good report there. I told you emphatically, man, that truck is getting you ready, man. I must admit, you feeling comfortable in the chairs over there.
It's getting better. It's getting better. Yes, indeed.
With that being said, let's bring on our colleague here, Mike. He's doing all he can to make sure he joins us. I appreciate him putting in 5th gear and finding us a little time. With that being said, Mike, what do you think of the top 5 poll rankings, week number 7?
Yeah, so I have no issues with the ranking. I do think it was a little bit light. So we gotta look at it's Jackson State and everybody else. You said Jackson State is rolling. They beat Bethune like Bethune took their lunch money and it made Jackson State mad. And they beat them 52-39. They beat FAMU like FAMU talked about their mama. They beat Arkansas Pine Bluff like they talked about their little brother. So it's Jackson State and everybody else. You can put an honorable mention for Grambling State, but at the end of the day, it's Jackson State all the way. And if you look at statistics, and you got to look at who's leading the SWAC in scoring. It's UAPB 74.8. My colleague Charles, the Mr. Magnificent, the wonderful Charles, the one who's occupying the big boy chair. He provided some good statistics, but here's one: margin of victory. Jackson State is still up. Their average margin of victory is 13.5. The next up is 10.2 by Grambling State, and then somewhere down the middle, about half order of magnitude, is Arkansas Pine Bluff and Bethune at 6.0. Then you got to throw in the other factors like rebounding and free throws. Jackson State is a complete team. It's Jackson State and anybody else, and maybe Grambling State on a good day.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Charles, let me go to you and just ask you. Obviously, you have key matchups, and I said we'll get in more detail as time. But just quickly, what are your thoughts in terms of this Saturday matchup between Grambling and Southern? Grambling comes in at 16-8, Southern at 11-3. In terms of the standings, they sit respectively at 2 and tied for third, if you would. Grambling is sitting at 10-3. Southern's at 9-4, one game back. And so this is a big matchup in terms of seeding, in terms of what that looks like. For Southern, I think it's especially big from the standpoint, you can flip and move into that second, third slot versus 4, which means your first matchup is 4-5, which is always tough. But bigger than that, if you get in the semifinals, your thoughts are that you're probably playing the number 1 seed Jackson State versus maybe being able to see if you can get them in the final, which is fascinating. So, Charles, what's your thoughts in terms of, if nothing else, the importance of that matchup this Saturday against the rivals of Southern and Grambling?
And I think this is going to be a great matchup. When you got an opportunity to really look at Southern up close this past weekend, and I think I turned over to you and I said, they still have the makings of a great tournament team. When you take a look at their guard play, especially, and the fact that they were able to rebound the ball like they did both at Prairie View and at Texas Southern. But Grambling going to Baton Rouge, a rivalry weekend, I think it's fascinating. I think both teams are very similar looking to me, so it's a very difficult call. And I was talking with Coach Burnett Skeet. The thing that she kind of separated out with regards to Grambling and Southern is she said, Grambling's physicality. She knew her team was going to have an issue with regards to the physicality and things of that nature, and that's going to bode well for them, especially as we get into the SWAC tournament, in that they can be physical. They have the ability to be physical with you. So I think that's something that bears in mind, keeping an eye on going the rest of the way with regards to Grambling's physicality, especially going down to Baton Rouge this weekend.
Good stuff, and I agree with you fully. Let's take our next break. We'll come back on the other side. When you talk about the MEAC, it looks like Norfolk State has given themselves a little breathing room as they have a 2-game lead. We'll see what that looks like as they continue their march to a regular season championship. With that being said, let's take our second break. We'll come back on the other side and talk about the men's top 7 in the major division and see what these gentlemen think. We'll be right back after this second break.
If you think all pads are exactly the same, think again. This is Always Ultra Thins reinvented with the Always Triple Protection System. This pad wicks gushes 90% faster, absorbs even more so you can feel dry, and locks odors in. Rethink your pad for up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort with the totally reinvented Always Ultra Thins. This is always like never before.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
As technology continues to bring changes to the world of education, it's time we also reimagine teacher professional development. Gone are the days of one-size-fits-all learning that can only be accessed at a specific time and place. The Stride PD Center is an on-demand library of mobile-friendly courses that allow educators to learn anytime and anywhere. Our dynamic courses provide bite-sized learning and help educators advance their knowledge while also gaining professional development hours. The best professional development plans are those that include a level of flexibility and choice for educators. Whether you're a teacher, school, or district, visit us today to take charge of your learning.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. I was going to say Mike Washington, but it looks like he had to drop back off. He said he did have some Wi-Fi issues, so we'll see if we can get him back maybe for the last second, and we'll move on from there. With that being said, Charles, let's get into this major division on the men's side and give you an update of what it looks like here. Dropping out, not the case. We still have the top 5 teams as they've kind of settled in. We have some teams that have a puncher's chance on the outside wanting to get in. And I was looking to see maybe Texas Southern would find a way to break into it. They had a close game loss against Grambling, but they got the big win over number 1 seed Southern in terms of that. But it wasn't enough to jump them in the top 5. But you see, they have closed the gap. So it'll be fascinating to see what that looks like moving forward. Quietly, Jackson State Tigers have righted the ship. Got a little bit in that game, and it looked a little emotional as they jumped out there. Big lead. Bethune-Cookman fought back. You were kind of saying, hey, maybe Jackson State hasn't got right yet. But then they said, nope, not so fast. We're okay. Settled things down and got the W over a game Bethune-Cookman team. So a big, solid win. They've won a couple of games straight now. So they're playing much better basketball, sitting at 12-14, 8-5. And we'll see as they close out things. This certainly is the time that you want to be playing some of your best basketball. So it's interesting to see what that looks like. Getting into the top 5, North Carolina Central Eagles sit at 13-11, 5-4. They had 2 tough losses this past weekend in terms of what took place. Crazy matchups. Saturday, they lost against Howard 90-82. And then on Monday, they had the real big matchup against Norfolk State that went down to the end. Norfolk State got it done 80-74, but that's a game that went back and forth. In fact, the Eagles led early in that matchup, but they were on the road, and it seemed like a little bit of that home field advantage paid off for the Spartans that were able to split the series now. We have to look at the point differential to see if that comes into play in seedings later down the road. At number 4, Tennessee State Tigers were playing some good basketball, and they take 2 big L's. One of them you may have felt a little bit of something about, but the other one you really didn't see coming. But they're going in the wrong direction as they do fall, and they fall 2 spots, much like North Carolina that also fell 2 spots. The Tigers are now at 15-12, 8-6 in conference play. Group of teams in the OVC are in that mix in terms of what that looks like. So they're still in the mix going on there, but I'm not sure if first place is anything they can look at. They're tied with Eversville, SIU Eversville Cougars, but they're 3 games back of the first place Morehead State Eagles. And just when you thought Eagles were going to get in, they took a couple of losses, 2 straight losses. Morehead State So you talking about Tennessee State really not taking advantage of a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
Past weekend, I wanted to make sure I got that in. At number 3, Southern Jaguars. Remember, they were sitting at number 1, so they fall 2 spots. We will have a new number 1 team this week. We'll see what that looks like. Southern Jaguars. They got the big win on the road at Prairie View, a tough, gritty game, a couple of technical fouls, but they got on the road, got out of it, got it done. And then they played Texas Southern that controlled that game just all the way through. Got maybe a little close at the end, but didn't seem like you felt concerned about Texas Southern. They certainly closed things out and got it done. So Texas Southern seems like they're getting ready for March as they do many times. They got a big win over Southern and dropped Southern 2 spots, previously ranked number 1. Southern falls to 16-10, 10-3 in the race, but they're still at the top of the standings. They're only a game back of Grambling in terms of what that looks like. Actually, they're tied, I should say, both at 10-3, which creates a big matchup this weekend. I saw a couple of lab listeners pointing this out. And much like earlier, the place would be was in Grambling for this matchup because both teams were in the hunt. Well, guess what? Now it seems like it's even more important because both on the men's and women's side, seedings 2 and 4. On the men's side, they're both tied at number 1. Grambling won the game earlier, so this is a big one. Grambling, if they win this, they really put a dip in Southern because they would have the head-to-head matchup, meaning they would take 2. You don't worry about that. Southern gets it done. You can get into a little tiebreaker for the number 1 seeds. But this is going to go a long way to see who holds on to the number 1 spot. But not to be too quick, Jackson State, Texas Southern, and oh, by the way, also a former champion of 2-3 years ago that won 2 straight, as well as Grambling getting done last year. Alcorn State Braves said, hey,
don't forget about the Braves.
Won 4 straight. Jackson State has won 4 straight.
Yeah.
But all 3 of these teams are just 2 teams back, 2 games back. So that's fascinating. Bringing us to number 1, which is Norfolk State. They had some huge wins this weekend that squarely puts them in control, if you would, with a 2-game lead in the MEAC with just a few games to go. So this was a huge statement. They got it done at home. First, it was Saturday. And they get the win over South Carolina State. That was in overtime, 71-7. Got to see the highlights of that game and watched it. The highlights showed as I turned around and got on the road and got to Prairie View to check out those games. South Carolina State hit what looked like a winner pretty much right at the buzzer, but it was waved off, instantly called now, in terms of an offensive foul. Defensive guy was backpedaling. The guy thought he was setting a screen. He was not moving, but the guy clearly couldn't see him because he was backpedaling. Ran right into him, and they called a foul, personal foul, waved off the shot.
Out.
Into the line. Norfolk State hits his free throw, and that's where you get the 4-point. That was a 2-point game. He hits a 3 and would have went up 1. So that's one that's going to be fascinating. Credit to Spartans. Because at the end of the day, all they look in the record book and it says W. They got it done. W. And they made it the one they really needed against North Carolina Central. They made that one pretty clear. Came from behind, got it done 80-74. So Jones does what he does and has his Spartans ready to win championships. And he's squarely putting himself in a position for the number 1 regular season seed and championship. But I'll tell you this about that tournament. I don't know if anybody's going to do the double-double in the MEAC or the SWAC this year.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly on the men's side. Maybe a little different on the women's side. Men's side, I'm not too sure about it. But the new number 1 ranked team this week is Norfolk State as they climb back to the top after Southern relinquishes. Tennessee State has been there. Central's been number 1. But now it's back to the Spartans. They are number 1 in week number 7. Charles, tell me what you think about the poll ranking. A lot going on this week.
Yeah, kudos to the Spartans. I mean, they got it done. South Carolina State, big win on Saturday, then the one that everybody had their eyes on last night, North Carolina Central. They get it done. Caught the stat line, especially Jamari Thomas getting to the free throw line 19 times. He's 16 of 19 from the free throw line. Norfolk State had to look at that and look at it twice. Like, wow, out of his 28 points, 16 of it came from the free throw line. So kudos to Norfolk State for going 2-0 this weekend. As you mentioned, the teams that were in front of Norfolk State, they fell by the wayside a little bit, if you will. Big question this weekend going into that game with Southern and Grambling. Do we see Tyrion Joseph? He is the SWAC leading scorer, 20.9 points per game, but he's been missing in action the past couple of games, past few games actually, in terms of checking the box scores and things of that nature. Grambling. You mentioned earlier, I think you said Grambling's men and women, they went 4-0 this weekend?
Yes.
Wow.
Grambling got the sweep. They go 4-0. The women got the sweep, both Grambling and Southern. They go 4-0. But yeah, Grambling comes in here. They get the victory over Texas Southern on Saturday, both men and women.
Big win.
They go down to Prairie View, close game, but they get the W. They win both of those matchups. So yeah, they head back to Louisiana with the share of the top spot because of the loss by Southern to Texas Southern, 4-1. So yeah, it's big time, big time. Shout out to Lennon as he talks about the Spartans owning the MEAC. Yeah, I must say it shows.
Shout out that they got the MEAC over there. So Grambling, if I understand it correctly, they got some barbecue and some Frenchies and headed on back to Grambling this with the big 4-0 weekend. That's impressive. I don't know when the last time this happened. Where you had a team.
Did you have to talk about them picking up the Louisiana French chicken
and picked the
Texas brisket,
barbecue and Frenchies. And
I know what I'm saying. Hey, well done it. Took it all back home smiling.
Impressive.
I'm gonna have to get with the Grambling men's coach. You know, he been smiling a little too much, too easy. One thing that I'm fascinated with Grambling, and you know, obviously you always root for your team, you know, your alma maters. In our case, we have two of them that we can find a way to win, which is always nice because you get double luck. But there's a small part of me that actually root for Grambling. Mm-hmm. They haven't been to the tournament. Mm-hmm. And they've had some really good teams. So if they can find a way to get the regular season championship, I'd give them much credit. But really, it'd be special. Obviously, I'd love to see Prairie View, Texas Southern, even Jackson State for you yourself win the tournament. But there's a small part of me that would kind of have a glean and be like, that's cool. Grambling State finally got the ticket to the NCAA tournament they've never been able to do. And this is a program in NIA Day that has won a NIA national championship.
Yeah. Proud basketball tradition. And they've been right there in the mix in terms of being in some SWAC championship games. But I tell you what, and I think I turned to you last night, and I said this last night, that Texas Southern team that.
So I see Charles kind of knocked off. It must be a going thing there. So as he comes back in, what were you saying you were wanting to say about the Texas Southern team?
No, I'm saying that Texas Southern team that we saw last night, that's the Texas Southern team that I would be a little scared about, because when PJ Henry gets to coming downhill and then he starts knocking down jumpers, they become a different team because he can get in the lane and cause all sorts of havoc, and those wings out there waiting to catch and shoot. And that's the Texas Southern team that you end up seeing in the SWAC tournament.
Like any good basketball team and good players, when they get those wide open threes, they hit at a much higher clip than when shots are not going in for BJ and to PJ, I said, in terms of what he's able to do. He opens it up, then he gets his big man involved, and they play much better. And then what they able to do on the defensive side when they are able to get it offensively, they turn it up defensively as well.
Very
a lot of teams, they play from a defensive perspective, and then offense comes with that. But they seem different. They seem, when they play offensively in a certain style, it seems to help them defensively. Check this out, Charles, though. In the MEAC, you have 5 teams tied at 5-4, 2 games back.
Logjam.
You know how deep the logjam is in the MEAC. Morgan State Bears at 5-4. South Carolina State Bulldogs at 5-4. North Carolina Central at 5-4. Howard at 5-4. Delaware State at 5-4. So it'll be interesting to see who's able to kind of break out this log jam This weekend, we'll get into some of those key matchups, but I'm fascinated to see what that looks like. Can Norfolk State continue to find a way wins? Can they stretch it out and kind of lock in that regular season championship #1 seed? I'd say be careful, not so fast. So while they sit at comfortably at 7-2, they've had some really close games.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the fun thing about watching basketball this past season is there is real parity. I mean, you got teams that kind of separate for a little second or two, but you saw, like you mentioned, the 5 and 4, the log jams over in the MEAC. Same thing over in the SWAC. You got Southern and Grambling sitting up there 10-3, but 1-2-3. Jackson State, Texas Southern, Alcorn 8-5. Bethune-Cookman and Alabama State right there at 7-6, and Alabama A&M at 7-6, and nobody's a pushover. Nobody's a pushover. Teams can't go on the road and get victories, and I think that's one of the things that we've seen this past season.
Obviously, we paid a lot of love to Grambling and Southern in terms of that rivalry game, but we got another one in Mississippi that is pretty important this way. Women's side, Jackson State, you probably think they're going to find a way to get it done. Alcorn Braves, they're going to give them a lot of their money. It isn't Alcorn, so strange things happen down there for men's and women's. But on the men's side, to me, it really get interesting with both teams coming in with 4-game win streaks.
Yeah,
obviously it means both teams are playing really well. They sit at 8-5, 2 games back. So the victor in this game gets the log the 5th win in a row. They get a little extra time the week to prepare as they get things the following week, but it's going to put them, 1 game behind whoever loses Grambling and Jaguars in terms of that. So that's going to be fascinating when you think of what that looks like. So they're going to be tied with the loser of that game in terms of what they get it. So, they'll be 1 game back of that, 2 games back still of whoever wins that matchup. But it's an important game, put it that way.
And the reservation will be rocking this weekend. Both teams coming in with 4-game win streaks, like you mentioned. Who gets the leverage going forward? It's been impressive because Jackson State was, I think, they were in a lull, if you will, for about 3 or 4 games, and for them to kind of turn things around during this stretch, that's pretty impressive. And like same thing in regards to Alcorn. They were kind of up and down, but they seem to have gained their footing. So you got 2 teams on the upswing coming into this game.
Good stuff. Let's get into our last segment. We'll take our last break and come back on the other side, give you some final thoughts, see if Charles wants to ask the question of the day. We'll see what that looks like. We get back in some nitty-gritty and talk a little more about some of these key matchups. Stick with us. Be right back after this break.
We're back. It's time for the 2024 Urban NerdCon. Join us in Atlanta, Georgia, April 26th through the 28th at the Cortland Grand Hotel. Special guests include Underworld creator Kevin Grievous, Gary Gray from Fairly Odd Parents, from Nickelodeon, Giovanni Samuels, the Science Machine Michael Green, the Sci-Fi Sisters, and from Spaceballs and Star Trek Voyager, Tim Russ.
Hi, I'm Tim Russ. Join me April 26th through the 28th at the Cortland Grand Hotel in Atlanta, Georgia for the Urban NerdCon. Our heroes, our villains, our stories, everyone con. I'll see you there. Live long and prosper.
Visit theurbannerdcon.net to get your buy one, get one free badges before the price increases. Remember, our heroes, our villains, our stories, everyone's con. See?
Itchy, squirmy, scratchy, family not getting clean? Get Charmin Ultra Strong. Go get 'em! It just cleans better. With a diamond weave texture, your family can use less while still getting clean.
Goodbye, itchy squirm. Hello, cream bottom.
We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
At Hampton Law, our primary goal is to provide non-traditional yet effective solutions and redefine the approach to client legal concerns. As your trusted legal advisor, we believe in sophisticated, personalized services that eliminate the confusion and complexity sometimes associated with legal matters. Our high standard for client care and concern, coupled with our extensive legal knowledge and skills, make Hampton Law a resource focused on the protection of the client's interest and overall goals. We value our clients and truly enjoy working with them. Visit thamptonlaw.com to conveniently schedule an appointment online. Tamika Hampton Esquire, 1631 Rock Springs Road, Suite 336, Apopka, Florida, 407-494-1471. thamptonlaw.com.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Mike was able to get in here for a slight segment to talk about the women's basketball poll rankings, but the internet is not his friend today. With that being said, last segment, sometimes we like to talk a little more about the business side of things, give Charles a chance to ask some particular questions. Let me see what direction he wants to go today. Can he stump the dean?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that created a little bit of scuttlebutt this past week is you had the settlement in regards to the Southern Heritage Classic. Jackson State agreed to pay Summit Management Corporation, which is the entity that controls the Southern Heritage Classic, $800,000 to settle a lawsuit that stemmed from Jackson State pulling out of the final 2 years of the Southern Heritage Classic. So I will say, as I fielded a lot of text and a lot of finger pointing and a lot of grief and this, that, and the other in regards to the settlement, I said, let me wait until Tuesday. Let's ask Dr. Cavil, is this as hefty a price as some might think?
It's really good, and I want to kind of hedge it this way. Anytime that you have to write a check for $800,000 for an institution, that's not something that you just want to do. But I think if you go inside the numbers a little deeper, it may not seem as dramatic as some would think, or how much $800,000 when that's not necessarily what people have in their savings accounts until maybe they retire. Then some people have millions of dollars, so they'll look at $800,000, kind of laugh at you as well. But instead of receiving $350,000, they pay out essentially $400,000 a year. Remember, this is over 2 years, so one of the first things you do. So let's break it down in terms of $400,000. So automatically, when you think somebody's going to write a check to you for $350,000 versus you writing a check for them for $400,000, I can see why some people are a little concerned. But I think one of the things that you want to think about in this is when you take a little deeper look at that, while you were getting a $350K, I should say, the question is how much did that go towards expenses? So how much were you really making in terms of that? And obviously that was what a little of the discussion was coming into that with Coach Prime. Really, when you think about it, Coach Prime kind of put it in public and lit the match. A lot of people got lost in that part of it. But really the decision is made from the president, legal counsel, general counsel is what you call them, and the athletic director or VP of athletics goes a long ways in these decisions. But one of the things that I didn't hear people talk about in this fact is the fact that while people focus on the SWAC classic that was part of this lawsuit, frankly, and what many people were suggesting that Southern and Jackson State were going to participate in it, that never was finalized. But people forget, while that didn't happen, Jackson State still had another home game. What was the average cost of a home game, particularly during the time, I should say cost revenue, that Jackson State was taking in for a home game during the time of Coach Prime? What did you believe those prices were, Charles?
Could you restate the question?
In terms of what Jackson State was averaging for a home game during the time of Coach Prime?
42, I believe in 2021, it was 40,000 or something to that effect. In 2022, 42,000.
Right. And so that's what, over $1 million revenue, at least 300 $750,000. I would say close to $1 million, maybe a little more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at it like that, that's 2 years where you have $1 million, just simplifying it, at home, versus you only getting 400,000. So even if you augment that and you pay out 400,000, and let's say you're making $1 million, you still came out just overall in the net positive.
Mm-hmm.
Not the kind of money you would want. Obviously, you'd want to be able to clear and have the money, not have to pay anything. But I'm not sure if many people really thought about the fact that you did have another home game that generated some money that allowed you to write the check that you ultimately had to do. Now, if you, the promoter, you really are treating some of your good friends to some nice steak dinners. Shout out to Rick out there in regards to the fact that you made you an extra $400,000 over 2 years, and you still end up having the Southern Heritage Classic. Now, obviously, your attendance was down a little bit, but I'm sure you still had a net profit in terms of that matchup, and then you get a chance for windfall of money. So for the promoter in a lot of cases, he certainly is feeling good. But I just wanted to provide some more thought process in terms of looking at the entire picture of the revenue that was involved. Obviously, again, I'll make it clear, I'm not saying that you should be happy anytime that you lose a settlement and have to write a check. But it may not be as deep a hole as one would think when you take a couple of other figures into it.
Does it muddy the water for not just Jackson State, but does it muddy the water for other potential HBCU schools to look at doing business with Southern Heritage Classic?
I think that really depends on each institution, which is a really important question. The promoter even made it clear that Jackson State didn't seem like it had any interest in coming back.
Mm-hmm.
That's one you don't have to really worry about. You did see the fact that Pine Bluff saw that it was worth the value to them. It makes a lot of sense in terms of regionality of that game.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I'd be intrigued about is how much the promoter believes the value of the institutions are. So, for example, a lot of people were talking about maybe Southern would get in the Classic. I certainly could see Southern, entertaining it, but would be $400K or even $450 be the value to have? You see a lot more institutions, particularly with, significant home attendance opportunities at the gates, namely Southern when they're doing relatively well. Particularly you saw the excitement when the Dooley first came in, maybe not as much last year. FAMU now in terms what they've done a couple of years ago, maybe a little changeover with a different coach. But after coming off a championship, you ought to believe they're going to do well with their season tickets and what they average at a home game. Jackson State, obviously. So to get them to give up a home gate, I think is going to cost you more. So I'm not sure if it's just the fact that it becomes challenging. I don't know if the value is there when people look a little closer of what they want to be paid to play in the Classic like that.
Well, how do you, answer the naysayers? Well, I don't think they generated that much money in the 2 home games that they got in terms of not going to the Southern Heritage Classic and things of that nature. I mean, that's a natural, almost SWAC reply to, did it not hurt as much as you thought it hurt?
To be honest with you, I don't pay attention to people that are not serious about, doing their homework. I mean, it's not hard to calculate how much revenue. I mean, it's been out there on the records. They paid little or no financing for the facility. Obviously, you have your operation costs that goes into it, but ticket sales at a certain cost lets you know at least how much revenue is coming in. So that's not really hard to see. That doesn't include parking, who gets parking, those kind of questions. But we know, generally speaking, home games tend to be more beneficial than road or Classic games just in the general practice. Because not only do you have the ability to generate the revenue from your home gate, but you also have what you look at in the economic sense of the partnership that you do to your community and to those businesses that support you. Now, you can have a further question about, are those businesses really supporting you? That's one of the questions you got to figure out. How do you make sure that's taking place? But in a lot of ways, with sponsorships, you see that out there. It gives you another chance to give the value to your sponsors that you already have. It gives you a way to have a multiplier effect of new businesses that you may bring in. So, yeah, I think for those that have that question, if they're serious about them, you just tell them to go do the math and the calculations. So some folks you can tell automatically that they're not serious, that they're in it to kind of chastise another group or another institution. And it's fine. We got, trash talk. It is what it is. But in serious conversations, I don't intermingle trash talk with those that are serious about looking at the numbers and just getting a full picture. Again, not saying that it didn't hurt, not saying that that's not something that you want to do regular, but I did want to give a perspective of looking at the total picture, not just, the news headlines that talks a little bit about the fact that you lost a settlement, which is fact. But what does it mean when you look at the total picture of what displacement of the money associated with that time, which brings it a little more clear in the picture in terms of what the total cash outlay looked like for that year or the last 2 years in terms of augmenting that cash over a 2-year period.
Understood.
With that being said, let's bring it to the close. See if people are interested in a little bit of the business side of sports. And when we talk about it, those are the questions that we have when we look in the classroom, when we ask our students to do the case studies. And it's fascinating, Charles, as we get in those conversations with students, and they start to ask those questions and bring it to your attention and say, well, what about this, Dr. Cavil, or Professor Bishop? And that's in a lot of ways when you really get excited, because you understand that they're starting to look at the total finance, total economic, which the brand association, which is really the big picture in regards to that, which is different than what you do in terms of journalism or creative talk, which is important as well, because it certainly is entertaining and it gives you a different perspective. But there's a difference between the two and what that looks like. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. I hope you enjoyed the show. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday, 6 o'clock. We'll be back on Thursday, talk a little bit about the mid-major. We'll see if we can get some real good basketball talk in here as we start to get in the tournament time for the mid-majors. We told you about Langston locking up Sooner Athletic Conference as they bid to get another tournament championship and make a run, deep run in an NIA championship. We'll see what that looks like. We need to keep our eyes on some of these other NIA programs, Tougaloo, Talladega, some changes in terms of what that looks like in the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference. Teams are getting hot and heavy. Also on the women's side, Langston women's continue to play some good basketball. Xavier in the Red River Athletic Conference. We'll take a deeper dive of what that looks like. And things are really fascinating in the SIAC. We have 4 teams, that are playing really good basketball that could make an argument that they have a chance to cut out nuts. So I'm really fascinating to see, what does it look like in those regional rankings? One of the things people always have a concern with the SIAC in regards to what they do in non-conference play. It's not just in terms of them winning them games. They don't play a lot of those games. So people are fascinating what that looks like. Will that hurt them? Although you have a Benedict team that sits 3rd in the division, it's still a top 25 team, or at least was last week. So gives you some kudos of what that looks like. We look forward to Thursday to talk some of the latest in the lab. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. It's DrKenyattacavil, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on X, formerly known as Twitter. Facebook and YouTube is Inside the HBCU Sports Lab right here where you're watching. Green Big, continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
Roy?
Lecture?
Roy?
His mic is off. Just put that lecture.
Dismiss.